You starting the reel?
Yeah, it is.
And we're live.
And we are live at the Hive, episode 167. I am Dan Nadelko.
Matt Stefanich.
And I'm Justin Massio.
Awesome.
And Justin, I like what you've done with your new mural positioning there.
Yeah.
Kind of off to the side a little bit.
Yeah, I had to move it because now I'm facing the window. Before I wasn't even looking out the window, so it's nicer.
Is this your first live at your new spot? I think this is the first live since you've actually moved, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure it's just going to get filled with more plants as I join more lives.
I noticed it's a heck of a lot brighter in there, so you must have got new windows or something.
Yeah,
brighter windows.
Now I actually have windows. I didn't have windows before.
I know that struggle for sure. Yeah. Well, for this week, we have some good stuff that the bees have whipped up for us. It's about creative ideas, building brands, and building brands specifically on Instagram and TikTok.
Yes. So quite often Instagram and TikTok, I think especially TikTok, is kind of dismissed by certain portions of people that are in the marketing world. And I think that's a huge, massive mistake because there's so much opportunity on TikTok. And yeah, Justin, I think you're going to be talking about some creative branding and how to extend your brand.
Yep. All that good stuff.
Right on.
Alrighty. Well, without ado, let's kind of dive in here. So just kind of at the beginning, we're just going to kind of overline some of the discussion points. Some of these we've talked about before, so we're not really going to highlight them too much. But, the meaty stuff in here is going to be how to build a brand in 2021 specifically. What does create a mood board mean, right? Building your Instagram brand from the ground up. What does it mean? What you want to cover? Creative ideas for TikTok, some creative ideas for Instagram to help build your profiles out, get the engagement in there. And then lastly, we'll be talking about some influencer collaboration.
Yes, sir. So yeah, we're going to, preface this by saying, I think it's important to define your brand on each of these channels and extend the notion of what brand guidelines are and to be flexible so you're relevant on each of these powerful platforms. Just as a brief aside while we're getting started here is we're going to talk, there's a significant portion in our slides about branding and brand development. We've talked about those on other lives. You can hit those up as well. So they're there. We're going to share the slide deck so you can have it and use it, but we are going to skip through so we can get to some of the good stuff a little bit more quickly and have some time to talk about it.
Absolutely. So just again, some of the top downloads for you guys to look just where TikTok sits to put it in perspective. Top 3 across the board.
That might have been a little quick.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, so you can see across the board, overall downloads, App Store downloads, and Google Play downloads. TikTok's number 1, and then followed by Facebook in some respects, and Instagram as well, right? So it kind of shows you that, a lot of people are getting their content maybe primarily from TikTok, and then they're using the other 2 platforms a little bit less, right? Which is why we would want to focus on a new platform like TikTok.
Well, yeah, TikTok's just exploding in terms of size. And I think one thing to talk about very briefly, we might dig into it a little bit later as well, is the fact that there are in each of these, there is no single TikTok community. There's no single Twitter community, for example, or Facebook community. They're verticals, and you might know them as like marketing Twitter on Twitter, SEO Twitter. There's finance Twitter or finance TikTok. And people tend to go into these verticals and that's their niche and that's where they play. So it's important to understand that your audience is, just because TikTok has this thing about, Charli D'Amelio and teenage girls doing dances and lip syncs, that is obviously it's a big part of TikTok, but it's certainly not the only one. There's, for instance, legal TikTok and finance TikTok, crypto TikTok. And if you get into your vertical, you can really address a certain particular type of audience. There's TikTok dads, for example. That kind of thing.
For sure. Awesome. I will note before we move to the next slide, Twitter's not on here for the top 10 of either of these, which is interesting. Next.
Well, hey, Chris, how are you? Welcome back to week 2.
Hey, welcome back, guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, eh?
Yeah, Twitter's its its own
It's its
thing.
own thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, here's something, we kind of skipped the what's new because of this, but now it's relevant. This is a TikTok. I was listening to Kara Swisher's podcast, and I saw it elsewhere. Twitter is mulling a subscription-based model for additional features. It's tiered towards the size of your account, so it doesn't kick in until 10,000 plus followers.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting. The other one is oh my god, what is it called? And it's only on Apple. Matt, you're a Twitter guy. It's the Clubhouse. I forget the name of it.
I haven't heard of that.
So Twitter released a Clubhouse feature.
It's for communities. I assume it'd be for communities, wouldn't it?
What is it called? Hold on.
Let me see.
I'll get it in a second. Spaces. Twitter Spaces. So Twitter Spaces. So with the rise of Clubhouse and Clubhouse being this kind of massive, crazy thing, the theory is that so now obviously it's only on iOS, so I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. Quite. I might take one of my other devices and try it. The argument is that Clubhouse is actually a feature, and this is going to be the next stories. Is that you're going to see it happen on Twitter, and then you're going to see it happen on Insta and Facebook at the same time. And it's going to be one of these types of collaborative Clubhouse type rooms.
That's interesting. Really cool.
That is a what's new. There's 2 Twitter what's news.
Awesome.
All
Definitely
right.
keep an eye out for that.
Yeah,
for sure. So next, when we're building our brand, we want to one of the first things that we want to do is create a mood board. And we'll go into the other stuff that's on here a little bit later on throughout the brand. But Justin, do you want to maybe go over the mood board and why it's important?
So one thing that's really nice about a mood board is you honestly don't have to be a designer to make one, and you don't have to go that specific. You need to make sure it's kind of you got a good idea. That's kind of like for this one, for example, like if we're talking honeypot, obviously you want honeybees, you want honey. Then you see the images aren't just honeybees and honey. We have a purse there, we have earrings, stuff like that, like some shiny stuff. Like you got to create the mood where like this mood you're seeing that you kind of want. Obviously, you want honeys and bees and the colors of like that warmth of the yellows, but you also kind of want a luxurious feel because you see like purses, you see like earrings, you see bracelets, that kind of thing. That's kind of the vibe that this one's trying to give off. So you just kind of have to see, like who is that person, what kind of vibe you want to give off for this one. Warmth, this one again, like I said, luxury. That kind of thing kind of create that mood within this, and that it's grabbing any kind of image you want.
Yeah,
for sure.
Mood boards are all about inspiration. What inspires you? So it could be other brands, it could be images, it could be a whole bunch of things. But I think it's important to start there and try to get the feeling that you would get. So we can just kind of jump forward a little.
For sure. So one here is TikTok mood board for TikTok. We have some nice little ones that we've created over the past few months. So kind of gives you a feel of what's on our TikTok, right? We have some cool, crash courses and Q&As with the bees, but we also have some cool kind of fun Pokemon Go stuff on there just to kind of brighten it up. This one's more Instagram-ish, right? You can kind of see the types of content we have on our Instagram versus our TikTok. A little bit more infographics, a little bit more kind of inside look on the bees. And, we're even posting our TikToks onto our Instagram as well. You can see on May's intro when she joined the Hive, right? So interesting stuff on here going on, right?
Yeah, you can also see the different styles of posts too. Like you see Instagram's a bit more polished. It's a bit more very graphic heavy, where TikTok is a bit more casual. You want that different mood in that sense as well.
Yeah, and it's important. You can do these fairly quickly, but I think it's a good exercise to go through to really kind of define where you're going with your business or your personal brand on either of these two. So you're not just kind of aimlessly throwing up content. You're going to kind of put a bit of a mini plan together to guide everything that you're doing, and your team if you've got multiple people working on one.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And the next part of that, and after you create your mood and you kind of create, what you're going to post, you kind of decide the purpose, right? What's the purpose of this content? Well, what are you trying to give your audience in return for either following you? What kind of content do your audience want to consume, right? So we have a few questions on this slide that you can ask yourself. And, these really kind of lay the foundation of what your profile is going to be. And to be honest, the purpose of your brand can be different across different platforms as well, right? You have different purposes on Instagram, you have different purposes on TikTok, or maybe even Facebook.
I think you want to go from your core brand and extend it out so that you do have those commonalities as well. But yeah, let's jump ahead a little bit so we don't get bogged down in the brand stuff.
Again,
yeah,
we went over this. Research your competition, what that means. Buyers personas, we've done this for the last 3 lives now, so we should be familiar with this.
Yeah.
Logo, maybe we can touch upon it just a little bit before we move on.
One thing I can say about logos is, as you can see here, like you need to make variety when it comes to a logo, because you don't know where you're going to be able to place it. So having different variations of the same logo and that have that same style really help when it comes to like posting on different places that you need to, like print or social. It needs a different look or a different styling.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Right. And then just being consistent with your messaging, right?
Yeah, some brand and communications tips there.
Yeah.
I think one of the important things on that one there is just use language that's appropriate in tone and language for the channel that you're on, right?
Yeah.
So don't put yourself into such a narrow silo that you feel like you can't. Especially if it's a business, you should feel free. I mean, look at what Wendy's does on Twitter, for example. And it was National Roast Day yesterday on Twitter. Actually, it's funny. Whoever does the Wendy's, if you get a chance, look at National Roast Day and all the requests from Wendy's, and whoever's managing that account, I should say, is doing a great job.
Yeah, for sure. And then for the building of the brand, so when you're building your Instagram brand, just high level things, obviously, to find the target audience, you want to analyze the competitors, visual identity, all this stuff we've kind of covered before when you're creating this brand.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, we can just jump back for a second there on this.
Yep.
When you're look at accounts that inspire you, even if they're in the same space. And look at what it is that they're doing, and researching those aspirational brands is a key way to guide where you want to go with your account and how you want it to grow. And should it, you have to define what your target market is, because, of course, everybody would like to have 10 million followers, right? But the reality is that, for example, if you're in a marketing niche, right? The audience is much smaller. The addressable audience for that topic is smaller than it is for music or fashion. And let's say if you're in fashion, try to find a specific niche that you can focus on, right? To tighten that down. So you're not just kind of trying to compete in large hashtags and large searches where you're going to get lost, especially if you're a smaller account. Again, engagement is more important than total volume.
For sure. Absolutely. And that comes with the target audience, right? That all comes with finding the needs and goals of individual people. Again, what kind of content your audience wants within their feeds, right? Maybe see what kind of people they're already following and the hashtags that they're already using within their posts. And then just some of the competitor analysis, the types of content between yours and your competitors. And this one's actually interesting because this is kind of building the visual identity, right? And when we're creating our honeypot specific posts and infographics, we like to use these visual cues of identity within our posts. Justin, maybe you'll kind of touch upon some of the things that you guys like to add in when you're creating these.
Yeah, one of the big things is we try to set up templates for when it comes to certain different types of posts for those visual cues. For example, when you see the quote graphics, they're a quote graphic because you see those big quotes on the corner. Even though we've changed the color to kind of grab more variation within the feed, we still have that visual cue that this is a kind of quote or tip. that we're going to be giving the viewer the videos as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you can see that there's the infographic or the mini infographic images are a deviation from a lot of our other creative and our brand guidelines that go outside of Instagram. But for Instagram, it's the use of the yellow it pops on the feed, so it's easier to gain attention, right? Yeah, have that flexibility, be flexible, create variations. And again, if you're using something like a Canva, it should be relatively easy for anybody to create some of those variations. And even if you're budget limited, for example, maybe you can hire a graphic designer on a contract to just make me, what do you think? Can you make me 8 or 10 different Canva templates, then I can go and create them myself later on.
For sure. And they don't all have to be the same. You can have variations. But I think one thing before moving on, just this creates familiarity with your brand as well when people scroll through their feeds at a really high frequency as well. Like if you notice within these images, we have the same type of color palette, the same honeypot yellow. And as you include more and more in that into your feed, people are just going to recognize out of the blue honeypot yellow. And they might read through maybe the newest posts that we have or the description, right? Just to kind of make them a little bit more familiar with your branding.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you also want to optimize that profile. The team has done a nice job here in the bios and descriptions, and then in each one of the sections, there are customized iconography with posts being added to each one of these, so someone can go visit the profile. Quickly, access any one of these specific hashtags. I believe this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. You want everything to be front facing, right? You want to give, if one of the things that you're trying to do on social media, like we said, one of the goals and types of content that you want to put in front of your audience is transparency, life within the Hive, maybe like we do. That's something that you want to make sure is front and forward so that people can access it easily, right?
Yeah, and it's almost a user experience lesson. Like you want people to have access to your info as fast as possible and as easy as possible. So putting them as highlights at the top is the best way to do that and organize it.
Yeah, and another thing is a theme. Like with Instagram, it's Hive life, right? So behind the scenes and getting to know the team, and also tips for each. We do tips for each platform on that platform.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Relevant to the platform, I should say.
Yep, for sure. And this is kind of what we're saying in terms of being familiar, creating familiarity with your content. It all comes with creating the content plan. And this is something that I know that the social media team and the creative team really kind of work together throughout the month, is creating this content plan to kind of put together and put it on our feeds, right, Justin?
Yep. Yeah. And again, you can kind of see like the kind of templates at work, making sure that each one has familiarity, that like that's going to be that kind of post and that's going to be this kind of post. And also trying to get our own photography in there and kind of get more, instead of using stock imagery all the time, make sure that we have our own photos. Like here, like that was my old office space kind of thing. Like you need to add that kind of human element, right?
Yeah, and the other part of creating your content plan is create say 6, 8, or 12 content themes that you're going to go with, right? That'll help guide and prevent you from struggling to figure out what it is I'm going to talk about. So a good way to start that process is to say, what are the pain points of my customers, right? And what do I want to convey? So if you want to create a personalized community, so you can go behind the scenes, that's a theme. You can, a weekly tip or trick with respect to your product, right? Or how it can be used. And you keep building those themes out, and that'll help you lay out that plan so you're not sitting there scratching your head trying to figure out what you're going to post next.
For sure. And if you intertwine it with some of your repeating deliverables or your projects, kind of like what we do live at the Hive, you almost have a dedicated theme throughout your work week where you can grab new content from, right? Yep. Something like highlighting what worked for you that week or what's new is something that can help continue to drive your content when maybe you don't feel like you have any content at all.
Well, and that's true. I think everybody does have content. Sorry, Justin, I'm covering your face here. Stacey's got a good comment here. Take your cornerstone content, set up a content schedule flow so you're always delivering a different piece of content each day. No one wants to see 5 quotes in a row.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
For sure.
Okay. Let's go.
And this just kind of talks about the insights, right? So as you're posting this content onto your profiles, you're not just gonna post it blindly and see how people react. You're gonna go dive deep into the insights. How long are they looking at your content for, right? Are they saving it for later? Are they sharing it with their friends? And this can kind of tell you whether or not you need to continue posting that content or maybe switch it up. And this is where we kind of get into the creative ideas. And I think from here on out, this is kind of where we want to focus the majority of the live on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So kind of defining that niche and creating some TikToks and videos that stand out from the rest.
Yeah. So, Matt, do you have those links handy?
I should
be in. If you could just open up the presentation there. Yeah. So let's watch a couple of these.
Okay, let me
see how well they come out. So what do we got here? This is a Nikon partner. Let's see what we got. 184,000 views of 1,156 comments. Okay.
I don't know if you can hear the sound that's coming through it, but they do have.
I don't know if you have to. You can unmute it, can't you?
I did.
Oh, okay, so it's not coming through your feed. It's fine. Well, we can just speak to, because obviously we've also got. I don't think that's part of it.
No.
So let's.
This one right here, the real estate one.
Yeah, let's look at the real estate one.
Yeah, real estate's a big one now on TikTok. Real estate agents are really taking advantage of the platform and filming obviously stuff for sale or stuff for rent, and it's really working.
I mean, this is obviously going to work. There's it's got to be a $10-20 million mansion. So that goes without saying. But I've seen a lot of really good. Actually, you know what? And we shouldn't dismiss Instagram Reels as well, although they're, some people would. But regardless of the platform, I guess the point here is using these inventive formats to really get creative in a simple way. There were a number of real estate agents, and my feeling in the real estate industry is there's really two completely polar opposites, right? The agents that are doing it really well and really get it, and the ones that are just posting kind of cringeworthy content that's very boring. And the important part here is, like, for example, there was a TikTok, Instagram Reels, where the real estate agent was 10 things that you need to know about living in X city, and he would show a property. What would I get for $400,000 in Perry, Ontario, right? Versus what do I get for $400,000 in the GTA or Mississauga?
Yeah.
Yep. Featuring each one of his properties for sale. And it was amazing because in the comments he was getting requests for DMs for more information. Right. So you can imagine how great it would be for a real estate agent to actually generate qualified leads that may eventually purchase from an Instagram or a TikTok.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, if you're in an industry like real estate or whatever it be, you can argue that for a lot, the industry, it doesn't like to change very much, right? They like to stick to their routine, their ways. This is how things are done. If you create a creative idea, like one of these TikToks that we just looked at, it'll pop that much more when it's like, oh, it's like a realtor is posting this TikTok and it's going viral. Like, what's going on here, right?
Yeah. Another thing for anybody that's a creator, a manufacturer, I see a lot of contractors, woodworkers, those how-to videos. There's a story, a pretty well-known story of a TikToker that was mixing paint. That's another big.
Yeah, I actually watched that one.
There's a huge TikTok community around paint mixing. Now you can imagine if you're a paint manufacturer, I would partner up with these creators. In fact, one of the TikTokers worked at a paint company, wrote up a marketing plan. The director of marketing shelved it, didn't even let him finish, and then he got fired. For this. I think we covered this story a while back. But then what ended up happening was he decided to become a full-time creator. And I think that was just a really boneheaded move on the company's part and that CMO's part. You should be embracing that, because you would sell a ton of paint and have people calling in. to say, how do I mix this and that? What can I mix with it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
a lot of people
for
don't
sure.
know that you can do custom mixes like that, and people will help you too, right? They just
Yeah.
think you just go to Bear and you get the pre-made ones, but you can
Yeah.
actually do custom mixes. So that was one thing that like a lot of people are learning on that sense as well.
Yeah. So let's look at the guac dance by Chipotle.
Oh, 1 second here. So this one here, she's just kind of she's previously famous for this.
Yeah.
This song, yeah, I think it was a Vine that went through, but she just kind of she does children's songs and things like that. So let's actually see here if I can. I'll mute myself for a bit. But I don't know. Can I?
I don't think
I
it's
don't
got.
think
You
I
got to
can
add a
feature.
desktop source.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't think
okay. It's
StreamYard.
okay.
Fine. So,
But
yeah, the guacamole song. So the Chipotle challenge, I guess, is all of these types of videos,
mhm.
for sure. Here we go, and then we've got who is this for?
This is for how to get better sleep. So they're just kind of going through a whole bunch of tips. He has voiceover. He's a doctor. He's kind of explaining why. But just really quick fire tips and things like that. And this has 7,000 likes, 105 comments, and it's a doctor's page, right? So
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, look, this is everything being relative. The way these will have a life because they do continue to pop up. So you're kind of creating a certain amount of, I wouldn't call it completely evergreen, but it certainly has a life to it. So these mini tutorials, these mini how-tos, I see teachers doing it. I see mathematicians on TikTok is actually pretty amazing,
yeah,
because what these mathematicians are doing are teaching people how to do algebra and calculus, and explaining it in a really, really approachable way. If you get a chance, you can just search for math. I think it's TikTok math, and watch some of these tutorials. Even if you're not into math, they teach you, and there's comments in there from kids and from students about how they wish their teachers would be able to explain this, and now they understand it. And this is in a 30-second video, maybe.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And
Right?
yeah, for sure. It's just the types of content that you can consume on here. It doesn't like it's so plentiful, right? You can get
Mhm.
almost anything you want. There's a few more on here. There's tutorials. People create these cool little tutorials on how to make like this cookie cake, for example.
Mhm.
So some really cool stuff there.
For sure. Yeah. So educating. And then the other thing is, you can do things like duets and reactions on TikTok.
Mhm.
So even if you're struggling to figure out what kind of content, you could always do reactions, right?
Mhm.
And that will help you grow your profile by using content that is popular, and makes it a little bit easier. Like, not everybody's going to create a somewhat more complicated TikTok, because this does have
Mhm.
some production
Yeah.
value to it.
And I
Yeah.
mean, like, they're not overly produced. Like, these aren't like super high quality videos either. Like, anyone can create these on your phone, right? It's not like you don't have the resources to create these on your
Yeah.
own.
Like
Yeah, and just with TikTok. So TikTok has a lot of features under the surface,
Mhm.
that I think a lot of people don't know about. You've got green screen, you've got duet, you've got reactions. I mean, I'm probably missing a ton.
Mhm.
Anybody in the audience a TikToker?
Yeah, I think we got a few bees that are for sure.
Yeah, and one of the plans that we have for Marketer Knows is actually setting up. There's a lot of really weird digital marketing stuff, because it always crosses over into things like affiliates and Shopify drop shippers and all this stuff. But one
Mhm.
of the plans is to create tutorials on for digital marketing, short tutorials, to help engage an audience that may be confused about how to use certain features and things like that.
For sure.
Okay?
Cool. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to get into some of the creative ideas for Instagram and how you can create a visual pleasing, a story, profile, or even Instagram grid as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is it Tailwind that lets you create the sample Instagram feeds? I believe it is
I think
Tailwind.
it is. Yeah, that's
Or
what
Yeah.
we've used. Yeah.
Iconosquare. I can't remember
yeah,
which
there's a
one.
couple of them. Yeah, Iconosquare, Tailwind that are really good.
Yeah, so you can actually create a mock-up of what you want your feed to look like. I think, I'm not sure if, at a certain point, there was a time when, these patterned feeds were pretty popular. I'm 50-50 split on, how effective that is.
Me too.
Triptychs are okay if it's done properly, but I think it's forcing a function that
shouldn't be.
profile-
It isn't there for a reason.
Yeah, well, profile views are, I think, pretty minimal, right?
Yeah, the one thing that I find struggle a lot is when people have that one big image but split it into the different parts of the feed. And that just never works well in the sense of like once you start posting something, then the image messes up on your feed. Like then when you're also scrolling through the feed, you see like a side of an arm and you're like, what's going on?
You're spamming the feed as well. You're spamming the feed, right?
Yeah. I think the one thing is those cases that's a designer that probably isn't as familiar saying this would look cool, right? If I was looking at it from a total profile view. But I think the reality is I don't know, I think that the percentage of profile views compared to newsfeed or story views and interactions is fractional. Like it's going to be a tiny percentage. So is it worth that effort? I don't think so. I also think Gary Vaynerchuk has done a really good job of loosening a lot of bigger brands up about what they post on their Instagram and how they post it. If you look at his visual identities all over the place, got a whole ton of completely different formats and styles and animations and subtitles. And I think it's okay. I think you should have guidelines to guide you so you're not blowing it up completely. I also think with Gary V, for example, it's intentionally done. It's not like they're just doing whatever, you know what I mean? I think there's a plan behind it, and it makes it, every post look slightly different within a theme.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I think, I don't know, you guys tell me, but I think one of the most important things and features on Instagram right now that gets the most engagement is stories versus pretty much anything else.
Yeah, I think when people first go into the app, we've kind of naturally, the first thing that we go for is the stories, right? And the person who you usually interact with the most is going to be the first story that you see. And I think it's just a type of content that we consume a lot quicker. We consume a lot more of it. And, the people's whose stories we want to see, we want to interact with them. So if there's a poll on there or a quiz within that story, we're more likely to take that type of engagement, right? So these are some great ways that you can interact with your audience, get a little bit more engagement. And in some cases, we've also used some ads with some of these engagement opportunities.
Boosting these.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think on Instagram, if you take a small budget, we've talked about this with Facebook and shown a ton of examples, and actually we've done a ton more of those with a few projects that we're working on now to create that virality, to use that small ad spend and that boost to your specific audience to catch the algorithm. Same thing with TikTok. Set up your TikTok business manager. It's kind of buggy, or a lot buggy right now, but it can be done.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I would talk about in terms of being creative is don't be afraid to just try it and see what happens. I mean, stories are very ephemeral. They come and they go, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you have a really good story that performed really well, feel free to add that into your highlights for later, right? Making sure that content is available for new people who come to your profile is really important, because odds are they're going to engage with that content just as well as your followers did.
Yeah, and the other thing, we're talking a lot about content creation, but I also think it's really important, especially as you're growing your account, is to spend at least 50% of your time interacting with smaller communities and smaller people in your same niche. Talk to individuals, engage, get the conversation going. That's just the kind of Greco-Roman wrestling way of growing your audience. But when you do it that way, you're gonna have a smaller audience, right? And that's okay. But you're going to have a much more engaged audience, because the way that you acquire them is by building that relationship, because you reached out to them first. And as you start to grow, like I've got this little problem with my personal Instagram account accidentally. I was just, kind of growth hacking some tests. And so I had created it's called the Indie Discovery List on Spotify. Right. And for a long time, I had it as an open list. So people would would come and just add their songs to it. And then someone wiped out that list, and so I was kind of annoyed. I rebuilt the list. I made it a closed list, and then on the Spotify list. Now this has already had, I think it's got at least 4,000 or 5,000 followers, right?
Oh wow!
My indie discovery list, yeah. What I did was on the description, I said, "Come visit me on Insta. Drop me a message. Let me know if you want to be added. I'll have a listen, and here you go." Somehow this list took off in Italy. I don't know why. I don't know how. So I have right now, I think I have 47 DMs in my general inbox to go through and add these people to the playlist. And what I had asked for, so my follower count goes like up and down like a yo-yo.
Yeah.
But that's another creative way to grow. I would just probably target it a little bit more than I did there with this Italian.
Yeah.
And, like, I have no idea why it's taken off in Italy.
Of all places, that's funny.
It's cool.
Yeah.
There's some great artists coming out.
Yeah,
of it.
you never know.
Right.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a sidebar on how to be creative. You can do things like creating Spotify playlists that you connect to your Insta, right, and start to push people back and forth to help build your profile and things like that. But like I said, try to be more targeted than I was. That was just accidental.
And I think with some of the points from that is you never know where you're gonna hit it with your audience, right? Like some place where you could be focusing. Maybe you've been focusing on Instagram forever, but that maybe a Spotify playlist is one of the ways that you engage with people the most, right? So maybe building on that and adding more ways that you can kind of drive people to that place. That might be a really good content strategy, right?
Yeah. So for Instagram, in terms of thought leadership, actually, I think the example might be a little parallel rather than right on. But with thought leadership, it's really the why more than the how, right? It's why you should be thinking about creating a TikTok marketing strategy for your business, as an example, right? Gary, I don't know why this makes me sound like I'm a fanboy, and I'm not. It's just the ones that pop into my mind. But what he does really well is he does these daily, like he does it on IG, or where he talks to people. I think it's from Tea with Gary V in the morning. And what he does is he talks about a lot more about the higher level rather than the granular, right? And I think that's important too. At the same time, while thought leadership is important, how-tos are incredibly useful and incredibly powerful. And in a sense, there's a parallel with how YouTube works and how TikTok and Instagram work, right? Incredibly powerful channels are how-to channels on YouTube, right? I think I mentioned the other week, I've got a how to detect and resolve WordPress plugins that I did like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little less than that. It still gets consistent. It works. So it still gets consistent views. You can take content that you see out there and then just make it snackable. Just bring it down a bit, and you can create these little how-tos. So you could span that from thought leadership right on down to tactically how to specifically do one thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think Yvonne has one. We're going to be moving on to some influencer collaborations, but Yvonne has a good comment here. He says, for contests as well, you can use them cross-platform. If one of your channels isn't performing well and is lacking followers, use your top channels to bring them there. Broadcast that contest through all of them, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, this is a good example. So we do a webinar program for not the most exciting B2B play. I shouldn't say that. It's very exciting. But it's in it's a B2B play, right? So where what do you talk about? How do you make it interesting? So one of the things that we do is we have a webinar program for them. And one of the things that we do is at the beginning of every webinar, and this, you could do this via email, you can do this anywhere. The first thing we do is the simplest thing in the world is, hey, everybody, we'd love it if you gave our business page a follow. We've created it as a LinkedIn resource for you to go ahead and swipe and share our content. You can download it, you can reshare it. And we went from very few, and it's gone up by hundreds and hundreds. So, very simple ways, as Yvonne is saying, is to cross-pollinate your audiences, pull them from one to the other.
Absolutely. So doing that actually is one of the ways that we start influencer collaborations, right? Reaching out to people within your social circles, reaching out to people. Maybe it's someone who's attended a webinar and maybe they run a really successful, consult or thought leadership profile on Instagram. That's a great way that you can start interacting with people and growing these relationships. Now, necessarily, they're not these huge influencers that have hundreds of thousands or even millions of followers. That's a little bit, an all eggs in one basket type strategy. But having micro influencers like this is a better strategy because you're able to tap into different niches almost and pick out, influencers that align really well with your content and your brand. And maybe you can collaborate them and create events or even sponsored posts.
Sure. The one thing about this influencer collaboration that's really important to understand is that even if you had 100 followers on TikTok or Instagram and you found someone in the same aligned area that you're in and they have 100 people, well, those 200 people are probably not the same 200 people. You could double, if you got 100% conversion rate, you could potentially double, but at least very much increase the followers and engagement. And that if they've done a good job, that you're going to get that same thing. It's relationship development. And look, this is not new. This has been done for 10, 12 years on YouTube, right? Yeah. That is how these YouTubers got massive. They were living in what is now like things like the Hype House. But you look at people like Philip DeFranco and some of the older OG YouTubers, that continues today. Right.
For sure.
Bryce Hall has Hype House. Right. And the reason they do that is because they are collaborating together to build and grow these audiences exponentially. And that's one way that growth happens. So the model works. Doesn't matter how big you are. The model works. Collabs are incredibly powerful things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it goes both ways. If you're looking to create a relationship with someone, start liking their content, commenting on some of their posts, right? Just don't message them out of the blue and be like, hey, do you want to collaborate? Start introducing yourself to them through their notifications, right? And get your name there recognizable.
Give them an exact post that you really liked and why you liked it. It works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. So these are a few examples of some TikTok influencers that you can engage with, right? You can go through their content, see if it aligns with yours. And these TikTokers that you go out to who have these consistent followings and who have established brands, they might have a little bit more experience on the platform than you, right? So maybe if you reach out for a potential partnership, maybe they have something that they think would really work for you and their audience, and maybe that's something that you go towards.
And understand where you are with your budget. If you're going to hire an influencer, these are 10 and 11 million follower TikTokers. Now, it's interesting, at a certain point, find the ones that you can develop an ongoing collab. Like if you're on the sponsorship side rather than the collaboration side, right? Yep. If you're looking to do a TikToker sponsorship, don't just do one and walk away. Try to figure out a way that you can work together with them and find the right influencers over time. So you've got one every month, every 2 months, and that's going to help. And it's going to help their followers understand that you are a brand partner to them, and that you're not just advertising. Right?
Consistency is everything.
Yeah. The other thing is, ask the TikToker if they have any creative ideas, right? Let them, when they have creative freedoms, they're going to be much more. We did this with the esports company many, many years ago. And when we said that a lot of these influencers were just thrilled because a lot of brands didn't ask them, right?
Yeah.
These are people that post like once a day, twice a day. Like obviously they have ideas, like they're ready to go, right?
And their followers are going to be able to tell if it's content that they've created or content that's been imposed on them too. And if it gets to that point, it can be found as really, desensitive to the group as a whole, because they'll feel like they're being targeted and they're being kind of used in that sort of respect.
Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun. The example for that, and you see it especially on YouTube. You don't see it so much elsewhere, but Raid Shadow Legends, right?
Yeah.
You actually they have a huge sponsorship program, and it's obviously effective. But one of the things that you actually see quite often is they have a script, and sometimes what the YouTuber will do is basically just literally kind of make fun of the script while they're reading it and throw it shade, and it's very obvious if you're watching it, and that's not that effective. So yeah,
For sure. All right, moving on here. We got we're a little bit over time, but just the last little bit, collaborating through TikTok's creator marketplace, right? You can find creators that work with you. It's a really interesting way to kind of partner up, and I don't think any other platform has something like this. So definitely taking advantage of something this new that's sponsored by the platform is a great opportunity.
exactly. And it's one of those things where always get in when it's new.
For sure.
There's opportunity in those green fields. This is what we already talked about this.
Yeah.
Influencer collaboration. A little Charlie D'Amelio, right? She doesn't have a very big TikTok profile.
Yeah, no, she's not big at all.
No.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
May is saying influencers know what their audience is like. Oh boy. Influencers know what their audience likes, so giving them creativity and help engaging with their followers on a higher level.
For
yes, and it's understanding that creators are not ad platforms, right? Like there are people that inherently create on these platforms, and they want to tap into their creativity.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, everybody. Well, if you're in the United States, happy President's Day. If you're in Canada,
Yes.
Ontario, well, I don't know what it's in every province, but in Ontario, it's Family Day.
Yep.
It's something somewhere everywhere. So
Yeah.
we'll see you all next week. Enjoy your long weekend wherever you may be. And
See you then.
yeah, peace.
Bye.